we have the right to know what our governments know about us.
Yeah.
And if governments are taking action in our name and snooping on us and taking what we would all expect to be private interactions between citizens and processing it through immense computing power accessible only to governments and using it for the purposes of looking at what we're doing and then potentially controlling our actions, that should send a shiver down the spine of anyone who believes in individual liberty and who really believes in democracy.
Fuck yeah! Fuck yeah!
We, as the Greens in Parliament, have been trying to do something about it. At a minimum, the Greens believe that security agencies in Australia, if they want to access private information available electronically, should at a minimum have to go and get a warrant to do it.
There's a guy who lives in Berlin. His name's Wolfgang Schmidt, and he was talking about the PRISM program. He was a former lieutenant colonel with the Stasi, and he said, and I quote, "It's the height of naivety to believe that this information will not be used against citizens." They know this is true, and our departments and their agencies are learning it, and that's why they're so scared. That's why they're bringing down planes in Austria.
Last week, the Wikileaks party got registered as an official Australian party. And when I got involved in all this Wikileaks stuff, it was really as a human being and as a citizen and a mother that I was tired of watching our civil liberties erode after 9/11 and the continuous state of war on this planet. And it made me so angry I got sick of being what Sean Bedlam would call a dinner party activist and hanging around and talking about it but actually doing nothing. And the further I go down this journey, the more I realise that the only way we can resist this global fascist surveillance state is if we come together and we're prepared to take action. And I'm not talking about just writing petitions. I'm talking about voting for something different. I'm talking about breaking an old paradigm. I'm talking about being prepared to be civilly disobedient, because the forces that are against us are global and they're really well together, and we're currently fractured. So what I want to say to you today is, whenever this goddamn federal election happens, put the major parties last, respect the people that have stood up for civil liberties, embrace something new and bold that is built on activism and real people and not political spin, and consider getting active in your community. Go to your local member. Tell them it's not okay that we are one of the Five Eyes and that our data is being shipped to America. It's unacceptable. Why are we putting up with this, and why aren't we on the streets and angry all the time? And we need to push back against the major parties in this country who don't think there's anything wrong with the United States spying on us, taking our text messages, taking our emails. I'm involved in Wikileaks. I'm sure they have a whole file on me. What do I do about that? Do I say it's okay because I'm not doing anything wrong? No. I say it's actually fucking unacceptable, and I'd like to see it change. Thank you.
When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. In the age of permanent war, global economic meltdown, climate change, and attacks on civil liberties, every freedom fighter for truth and justice is very welcome and desperately needed. So I want to thank Snowden, Manning, and Assange for exposing what has been happening that's been kept secret from us, from exposing some of the critical truths that we need so desperately. What they've actually exposed is that our real enemies are not in Iraq or in Afghanistan or Iran, but they are right here in the middle of Australia and in the middle of the US. That's what they have exposed, and that's why they are hunted down. And together with these incredibly brave individuals, any brave government is also hunted down. And we've seen that with the absolute despicable act of air piracy against the Bolivian president, Evo Morales. That was one of the most disgusting, shameful acts we've seen in a long time. Now Snowden has now joined Assange and Manning as one of the most feared and hunted enemies of the state of the United States. Well, I say if these three guys are the enemy of the states, the US is the enemy of humanity.
We're established on freedom of information, but also keeping politicians and keeping governments out of our bedrooms. Now, as PRISM has shown us, and as Edward Snowden has shown us, it's far more than just our bedrooms. But maybe governments could learn a little bit from the adult industry. We've actually always kept privacy as paramount to our industry, and a lot of politicians would thank us for that. Despite their hypocrisy, so often they want to ban sexually explicit entertainment, close down brothels, and it's the same brothels and the same websites they themselves are visiting. Now, I don't want governments fucking interfering with my life, whether it's on what drugs I take, or who I love, who I have sex with, or when I want to die and how I can die with dignity. These are all civil liberties issues, and they are all based on humans and citizens' rights to privacy.
I've got good mates that operate in Quit Coal, and I'm proud to say that I have a friend who is part of Quit Coal. I'm not afraid to say that, and they're not afraid of the surveillance they've been under for the last few years. I organise a festival once a year called Fest La Frog, which is pushing the envelope on the most sustainable festival in the world. And I was loading 2 vans full of solid brewed beer out the front of my house, and there was a guy filming me as I did it. And I kept looking at him, he kept looking at me, and he just kept filming. He wasn't afraid of anything. So I walked up to this guy and I said, "Look, mate, what's this about? You know, why are you filming me?" And he goes, "I'm not filming you, I'm filming your street. It's beautiful." It is quite a beautiful street. It's the Grove in Coburg. I'm not afraid to say that either. It's a beautiful street. But I said, "Look, mate, you really got your camera trained on what I'm doing. What is that about, you know?" And he said, "Look, I'll delete all the bits with you in it." And I said, "You know, what does that even mean? You know, these days I'll delete it." I'm standing there looking at this guy and I said, "Look, here's my card. I'm not afraid of what I do. What I do is for securing people's futures. I'm all about sustainability. I'm all about community building. And I don't give a shit, man. You can film me. I'll see you later." Because courage is contagious, you know, and these feelings that I have for that situation wouldn't probably have come about unless I was aware of what people like Julian Assange, Bradley Manning, and now Edward Snowden have been doing for all of us.
Firstly, I'd like to say that we need your support, but we don't need your vote. We're actually a non-partisan NGO that since 1994 has been campaigning on digital rights and civil liberties in Australia. And we have become recently increasingly concerned over privacy and surveillance, both internationally with things like PRISM going on, and at the national and state level with issues such as the data retention proposals that the Australian government has been proposing, and recent news that at the Victorian state level, various public bodies, aside from the police, have been accessing phone and internet records without warrants. We call on all of you, whichever party or not you're from, to support our campaign on citizens, not suspects. You should support what we are doing if you're opposed to mass surveillance and the erosion of privacy and other civil liberties. We have this campaign going on, like I said, non-partisan, and we put pressure on the Australian government and other entities to stop surveilling us.
What I'd like to talk to you about is a bit of the history of surveillance in Australia. It's been going on a long time. We've finally cracked the media because of the interweb and social networks. It is no longer possible to keep all these things quiet. But surveillance, we talk about the PRISM system as if it's something new. Back in the 80s, we were talking about the PROMIS, the Prosecutors Management Information Service, which was developed in the United States and which the only countries using to begin with the test cases were Australia, Iraq, Israel and South Africa, as well as the United States. It was the start, and that was 30 years ago. We're not just a client state, we're an active partner, we're a participant. I said before, the PROMIS system, was tried in Australia. We're standing here. Just by looking around, we can look and see the RMIT University, where the stealth technologies that were developed for the first Iraq War in 1991, the development of the stealth technologies took place in those buildings just there. Okay, now they're looking at drone technology. And I just want to ask all of you as Melburnians to take control. What can we do? What can we do? We can hassle the RMIT. We can close down their drone technology centre. We can attack Elbit Systems, an Israeli arms company who have just opened an office in South Melbourne to provide all communications equipment for the Australian Army.
I want to mention something that Jacob had said. None of this is new in the United States. You could go back to the late 1700s and the Sedition Act that tried to silence Thomas Jefferson and the writing of the Declaration of Independence. You could go back to the 1800s when government agencies and police forces in the Army and the National Guard ruthlessly and brutally murdered and suppressed the Union movement throughout the United States. You could go back to the early part of the 20th century and the formation of the CIA. And you could look at what the CIA has done around the world, brutally murdering and instituting torture campaigns and overthrowing democratically elected governments around the world for 80 years. You could look at what happened to the '68 generation with the COINTEL program and what they did to the Black Panthers and what they did to the American Indian movement and what they did to SDS and the Students for Democratic Society and what they did to the communists and what they did to the socialists and what they did to the anarchists. And it didn't matter because a lot of times those groups were also fighting each other, looking at each other as the enemy instead of looking at who the real enemy was and is and continues to maintain to be today. It's not esoteric, it's not abstract, it's not out there. And we are the ones who are next. And anyone who thinks, oh, I just sign petitions, or oh, I don't talk about violent revolution, or oh, I'm not doing anything like this, and you think you're going to be safe, I think we all need to be very aware that we are the ones who are going to be watched and are being watched. We should probably say hello to whoever's out there now from the government. And where can we find hope? Well, as my friend Emerson and I were just talking about yesterday and today, look to Egypt. Look at our brothers and sisters in Greece. Look at our brothers and sisters in Brazil. Look at our brothers and sisters in Montreal. Look at our brothers and sisters in Portugal. Look at our brothers and sisters in Africa. There are people around the world that are resisting. They've been in the streets for years. They are willing to give their lives, die, be put in jail, be beaten by the police and the state apparatus in order to get what we want.
As activists, what we need to be doing is putting the authorities into a dilemma. They have to act. And no matter how they act, no matter which way they jump, they are exposed. And the more times we expose them, the weaker they get. And the more changes we can make. We've got to lose all of the narratives about what's standing in our way. Nothing is standing in our way. Not one fucking thing. So, thank yourselves for coming, everyone. Well done. But this is just the beginning. It's a new beginning, a new beginning. Again. Thank you very much.